Welcome back to Success is Weird and Messy. I'm your host, Kathleen Gabriel. Each week, I talk with entrepreneurs about how they've navigated all the challenges and changes that come with running a business. Today, I'm joined by Kari White, the owner of Domestique Financial. Kari provides CFO and business growth advisory services to small and medium-sized businesses, leveraging her international background in finance and capital investments. Kari, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think you're a typical fractional CFO. Tell me all about what you do.
Yeah. So I like to describe what I do more as CFO advisory versus fractional CFO. So when I work with business owners, essentially what I'm trying to do is understand where their business is today, where do they want their business to be in the future, and then how do we bridge that gap? So it's all about helping them understand what is and isn't working within their business, where is all the money flowing, how do we put a plan in place so that they have enough cash to be able to hit the goals for their business. So it's more of an advisory and a guiding approach versus, a fractional CFO where I'm, not necessarily managing their teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you arrive at this as your career? I feel like you've had a pretty broad and deep experience in a lot of different things. So where did you start from and how did you get here?
Yeah. So I started my career in public accounting and I was working for PwC. And when I started with them, I had my plan of I was going to make every single level to hit partner by this date and life was going to be grand. And less than a year in, I sat there thinking, oh my gosh, this is terrible. So I ended up getting my CPA license and quickly decided it was not the right fit for me. I found I was wanting to understand what was behind the numbers and what was driving the numbers. So accounting wasn't the best fit for me. So I pivoted into various corporate finance roles, worked across various industries of commercial real estate and retail, and then ended up in the tech industry. And in my last corporate job, I was working for a company in San Diego, but they were a global company. And we had a small office in Switzerland, and the European business was growing. End of 2019, I was fortunate enough to get to move to Switzerland with that company and work out of Europe, handling different entities there for a while. And it was a great experience and did that for a while, but I still kind of had that itch of there's got to be something more. And as I moved further along in my corporate career, I just wasn't as fulfilled as I wanted to be. So after trying to figure out what I wanted to do, about a year ago, I left the corporate world and started my CFO advisory business. So essentially, to me, there are tons of amazing people that start businesses. And, as a business owner, all of a sudden you're wearing a million hats. So my thought was, if I can help support those business owners on the financial aspect of their business, then it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. And honestly, you bring up something I think that as people go off in their young careers and they have these visions of, oh, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to be. There's so many things we cannot possibly know about what that is. The idea of joining a PricewaterhouseCooper, the idea of joining a big firm of any kind and saying, I'm going to work my way to the top and that's what success looks like. And then you realize, but I don't want to do any of this. That is such a wake-up call, and I feel like really listening to your gut and saying, "I'm gonna give up the name of this big firm," because that's hard to do. That's really shiny, you know? But you have to.
Yeah. Well, and when you're earlier in your career too, I mean, I remember I had a conversation with the main partner that was a good mentor to me. And I remember saying to him, like, look, at that point I had stuck it out for 2 years. And I said, look, is this just what it feels like when you're 23 and you're a couple years out of college? Like, am I supposed to hate my job this much? And like he was great, but he was like, no, this isn't the right fit for you. You gotta follow that gut and figure out what is the right fit, especially at that age in your career when you're so early on and have so many, so much time to figure it out.
That's a great mentor, honestly. Someone who says, "No, no, no, I need you here because you're good at what you do," versus you need to go and do something that you're actually gonna be fulfilled by.
Yes, yes. No, I got very lucky with him, but
And I mean, secondarily, it's that idea of realizing that part of your unhappiness was that the work itself wasn't the fit for you. And I think that especially from a distance, people don't really understand the difference between what a CPA does, what a CFO does, what all of the different aspects of accounting and finance are, because I do think from the outside, people start lumping accounting and finance just together as one thing. And they're very different careers.
Yes, and very different skill sets too, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so your interest in numbers versus business growth, because I think people who are really good at those numbers and those details get very passionate about, hey, look, I'm going to CPA the heck out of this. I'm going to get into all of your numbers and make sure your taxes are super clean and that you get all of the advantages that you can. And that's incredibly valuable, of course, for business, but it doesn't tell that story of, but what are we trying to do with all of it? And that's really where finance comes in. And so when you say that you are a financial advisory rather than a fractional CFO, what additional things that you do? I know that you gave us a summary at the beginning of, you partner with people, but what does that look like?
Yeah. So when I work with my business owners at the very beginning, it's really understanding, what are their goals and both on the personal and the business side. Cause a lot of times the small business owners, those are very coupled. So then really my goal is, okay, how do we get their business to be able to fulfill the goals that they have for themselves from at the end of the day, it all comes down to cash, right? A business, if you don't have cash, you can't stay in business. So when I'm working with my business owners, my job is okay, they've told me what success looks like to them and their business. Now, my job is to put the plan together to make sure they can get there. So even though I am looking in the numbers and working with their bookkeeper or the accountant they might have, I'm looking at the numbers every month to deep dive into what's happening. But when I'm meeting with the business owner, I'm more taking a higher level approach to show them, okay, here are the targets we set. Here's how we're doing to those targets. But let's focus on this area right now. We're not doing well here. So I know from a numbers perspective what's not going well, but I translate it into their language to say, likely these three things might be driving it. So let's dig into that and figure out what do we need to fix. So when I'm meeting with the business owner to review things, I'm more helping them figure out, okay, what needs to be worked on? And then how do we break that into very clear action steps so that all they need to worry about is, okay, we had our monthly financial review. They know exactly what they need to do in the next 30 days. Maybe it's, they need to work with their sales guys on certain things. They need to go back to the accountant to work on X, whatever it might be. They have a very clear list of, all right, need to work on these few things and that'll get us moving in the right direction. And then each month it's kind of a rinse and repeat to see how are we doing on those things. So it's more it's more guiding them in a way versus to me, a fractional CFO is more in the day to day operations, implementing financial systems, managing teams, right? So that's, you know, I'm not kind of another part time employee they have to manage. I'm more kind of their financial guide to make sure we can get their business to hit their goals.
And that's huge. That is so important in every aspect of business because I don't know, as soon as you go into any business, even if you're a solopreneur, you realize how complex and how, frankly, difficult some of these things can be of who are we hiring and why. And you talked about, the kind of sales stuff. I'm going through sales compensation planning with one of my clients right now. And I always lean on the finance people to say, what are we even doing here? Because that becomes its own mess of we want to motivate people, but we don't want to bankrupt the business. So all of those different aspects, they really do. I mean, from an HR perspective, I take this sort of humanist and process function and then say, okay, here's what we're looking at with people, but that still comes down to finance because you can see if it's working or not by looking at your numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of people don't like finance, but it's there, right? And it can be fun. Doesn't have to be intimidating, but yeah, literally every decision in a business is gonna have a financial implication.
I think people don't like emotionally they react to things that are shining the light on things that aren't working. So HR gets that hit a lot, finance, law, all of those get the hit of, oh, those people are just being negative. And honestly, most of the people that I know in the businesses in those verticals, no, they're great people. It's just that all of us are looking at, well, is this going to accomplish what you actually want it to do, or is it doing something else?
Yeah, exactly. No, you feel my pain. I remember in the corporate side, it was always I would bond with HR people because we were always, "It's all right, blame it on us. You gotta blame it on someone, right? So I'll take the fall, but I'll also make sure you stay in business, so we're good."
Which is key, isn't it? Well, and also I think especially as you get into larger and larger business entities, it becomes harder to change things. And when people feel the pain of, "Oh, I want to make a change," it's like the larger business is a giant cruise ship, and trying to make change means, okay, well, we got to steer this very slowly because it's so huge. Whereas that's what I find exciting about startup companies is that at a certain point, if you need to make a change, you just make it, and maybe it'll be the best change and maybe it won't, but you're moving around in a zippier, more flexible fashion.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's nice to see that you can impact a change versus sometimes when you're in a bigger organization, it may be the right thing to do, but your list number 100 on a priority, right? So it's like, well, we'll get to that later.
Exactly, exactly. So in your whole journey to being where you are, when has it gotten messy? What's been a challenge, or what's been a pivot that you've made that you either weren't expecting or maybe you were expecting, you're like, "Oh boy, yeah, that happened."
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind when I started my business, I initially was going to do like the bookkeeping and accounting side and the advisory side. I don't know why I had that thought because rewind 20 years ago to PwC when I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. But they do go hand in hand in a way. So I'm like, oh yeah, I could just offer both. And I took about one bookkeeping client where I was like, yep, nope, this is not for me. So yeah, I think, it's interesting when you start a business, especially like a service-based business, because you are starting from scratch and there are so many different ways you can go. And another challenge I found was I'm all for hearing other people's experiences and learning from other people, but how do I say this politely? You also get a lot of unsolicited advice from people where I had to quickly realize what do I want my business to be, not what is everybody else saying, "Oh, you should do this, you should do that." You should It's like so that was a challenge early on of okay, wait, like you know, I'm happy to listen to the advice, but what do I really want and where do I really want to take this? So that was kind of one of the first hurdles of all right, go back to, you're doing this for a reason. So go back to what really feels right to me and not what is everybody saying, no, you should do it this way or that way.
Yeah, and when you say that you started off, I don't know why I decided to pick up bookkeeping and accounting when that is absolutely not what you want to do. I think a lot of us do that. A lot of us look at, well, what's out there and what would be easy to pick up and what will, tide me through to until I get to do what I want to do. And I think that's a very normal thing to do. And that's all part of like, oh, I'm going into business, but I also need to survive. What do I need to do with that? And that idea of, oh, well, everyone else does this, I'll do it too. Sure. I mean, there's tons of bookkeeping and accounting business out there. So it's not the wrong idea to say you could pick it up, but it is also a distraction from what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, and I remember one day I was looking at something and I'm like, "Ugh, this isn't time." In my head, I'm like, it's close enough. I'm like, okay, that's my finance brain saying it's close enough.
Yes.
If I'm doing the books for a business, I shouldn't be saying it's close enough. So I'm like, all right, we gotta we gotta focus on where my skill sets are and stick to the advisory and the forward planning piece. And I'll happily partner with people that want to do the bookkeeping and the accounting side of
And it's so funny taking one's own advice sometimes is so hard.
it.
Like every once in a while I'll do a sort of internal check of my own business and say, if I were me and I were talking to a client like me, what would I be saying to them? How would I be advising them to run their business that might be different than what I am personally doing?
It's like doctors, right? They're like the, you know, some of the unhealthiest people because they don't take their own advice, but they're great at keeping us healthy.
They also don't wanna go to the doctor. They also don't wanna be told things they don't wanna hear. Yes, it is exactly that idea of, "Hey, what do I actually wanna do?" When I first started my business, same thing. I had, like, 4 different verticals that I was trying to work in beyond, strategic HR services. I was still doing resumes for people, and that was like a service-minded idea that I had of, well, I can do some pickup work for people and really help people find jobs, and I have this different perspective, and I stopped doing it because I realized well, first off, how much it was distracting me from what I'm trying to actually accomplish, but also realizing, honestly, someone else who actually focuses on this for a living for real is a better choice for all of these people. So my idea of trying to be of service to people was not as correct as I had intended it to be. And so I think that's part of the focus too, is saying not just, well, can I do it, but should I do it? Oh, I say those words to myself all the time. Just just because I can, should I?
Yes. I feel like that would be a good sticky note to, like, have on your computer or your desk at all times as a good reminder.
Yes, absolutely. And so, as you've gone down through this, you mentioned that you've gotten all kinds of unsolicited advice, as I think we all do. What's the best advice you've gotten, or what's the advice that you absolutely threw away and said, "No, this is not for me"?
The first thing that popped in my head was the best advice. So I guess we'll stick with the positives. But somebody early on told me the acronym of TACO, and having used to live in Southern California, I love tacos. So it stands for taking action changes outcomes. And to me, that's been something I'm trying to focus on, because if I look at a year ago when I started the business and kind of the goals I had for myself, have I hit all those goals? Admittedly, no. But I realized early on, okay, focus on what I can control, which I can control taking action. I can't necessarily control the outcomes of those actions to a certain extent, right? So to me, I really appreciate the advice of, like, just keep taking the actions and know that you're putting in the work. And it's tough because everybody's seeds take longer to sprout, right? So just because I'm taking actions today that might not see immediate results doesn't mean it's not doing preparation work to set me up for hitting those goals in the future.
Yeah, that is so smart because honestly, this year in particular, I'm noticing some seeds growing that I planted 3 years ago, and you just kinda keep going and doing what you can, and some stuff came up that I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I never would have thought this would have come to fruition, but here we are." And then, the longer you go on, the longer it's repeatable. And I will tell you, back in my youth, back when I got my first degree in theatrical stage management. So that was what I thought I was gonna do, and then realized this is not what I actually enjoy doing day to day. Maybe I'll just buy theater tickets and that'll be my involvement. But in that time, I was in grad school and an acting professor advised this fresh-faced group of youths to say, in acting, if anything can stop you from having this as a career, let it, because it's so hard and you have to take so much action. But if you want to do this, the only thing to do is to show up and keep doing it. And it doesn't matter if you get hired today. It doesn't matter if you get hired tomorrow. What matters is that you keep showing up and you keep doing it. And it's that same idea of taking action, because literally that is the only thing that we have control over. I don't have control over what other people think or do. I tell my clients all the time, I can't make you do anything. I'm here to advise. You can take my advice or not, but every day I can do something. And I think that is hugely valuable advice of, like, well, take action. That's it. And if you don't take action, that'll be a different outcome, you know?
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's really important in the entrepreneurial world because it's so easy with so many things in life, right? So easy to compare yourself to other people, or, especially people doing the same thing as you. It's like, well, wait, like, why have they gotten X amount of client? Where it's like, you're not necessarily doing something wrong. Like, as long as you're truly taking the action and following what you feel is the direction you want to take. Maybe it'll be quick for one person and not so quick for the other person, but you just it's hard to control those timelines. So if you can just let go of that a little bit and just say, okay, I'm going to keep showing up and I'm going to keep putting in the work and trust that it'll all work out when it's supposed to.
Yeah, I had a very interesting conversation recently exactly about that, of someone who wanted to take my business on the rocket ship and make me a millionaire. And I thought, having money sounds great. But honestly, that's the only thing about this story that I'm really connecting with is, yeah, life is easier when you have more resources. But what we're talking about, how to get there, those aren't the things that I want to do with my life and my business. I don't resonate with any of this. I think that's not the right path for me. And I have absolute confidence that this person could have done exactly what they'd said in terms of mentoring me towards this version of success. But at the end of the day, then where would I be and what would I be doing? What would my internal life be when I gave up on what I want to do?
Yeah.
So
Good for you for recognizing that, because it is hard. Sometimes it is like, "Ooh, bright shiny penny." Like, squirrel.
yeah,
It's
exactly. No, it's so shiny.
but then you're like, "Oh, shoot, I should not have done this," when you get too far down that road.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things of going through different experiences, having those different career shifts and being exposed to different ideas. You have the opportunity to find out, well, what do I want to do with this? And I talk to other HR people all the time because why not? We're the people who are in the trenches in these ways. And the further I get along in my business, the more I realize it's not so much that everyone's competition. There's enough work. There's plenty of work out there. It's more people do different things than I do. The people that do the same things that I do it in a different way. So we'll find the people who are the best fit to work with us. It's not about, ooh, I need to knock them down to get them out of my way. Yeah, they're not in my way. The only person in my way is me.
There's more than enough business for all of us to go around, and more than enough businesses that need the support that, yeah, one might not be the right fit, but that doesn't mean there's not a bunch of others down the road that, you know,
Yeah.
would be the fit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that. Well, I mean, with all of this talk about success, I would love to hear what your definition of success is for you in life and in business and in everything.
Yeah, to me, I think the answer to that question is success to me is if I'm living my life the way that is best for me and not the way that I think society is expecting me to live my life. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like a lot of us go through day to day just being like, I should do this. Okay, I'm at this stage of my life, so this is the next step. And we don't ever really stop and think, is this really what's right for us? That's how I ended up in accounting. I was good at math and numbers, and everybody said, "Oh, you can always get a job in accounting." And I just took the steps, but never really stopped to think about it. So, yeah, to me, it's really about what is the best way to live life for me, and am I, trying to live my life that way every day? And when I work with my business owners, I kind of try and bring that same aspect of when I first start working with a business. I don't know how many times I hear in an onboarding call of, what are your goals? I want to grow the business. Okay, well, what does that mean? I want to make more money. Okay, well, why? And if when I keep asking those why questions and peeling back the numbers, usually it's not that they want to grow the business and make more money. They want more time. They want more freedom of this. They wish they had this in their personal life, but they are blocked because of this in their business. So to me, I really like to try and help my business owners get back to what is their why and why did they start their business in the first place? And, is the business on track to deliver you that? Or if not, how do we make sure we can get you there from a financial perspective?
Absolutely. I have to say that resonated with me so much because I've been thinking a lot in my life just lately about how many narratives I've had about who I am and how I should live my life that upon reflection didn't come from me. And we have all of these narratives bombarding us every day. So it's not that I'm surprised that I picked up some unintentionally, but it really has made a huge change in what I think, exactly what I think about my business, what I'm doing with my time, and how I see success and how I see like what I want to do with all of this. And so really being alert to that idea of, well, is that someone else saying that this is success or is this me?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, moving abroad was a huge eye opener because I had always loved to travel and I'd done a lot of international travel before, but living abroad is different and just seeing that, wow, there really are more than one way to do life. It doesn't necessarily have to look the same. People in other countries are doing it completely differently. Like maybe it can work. So to me, that was a huge bonus of living abroad as well, of just like, oh, okay, like it can look different than we kind of have in our heads initially.
Yeah, absolutely. You get the broader perspective, and then you get the idea of, okay, well, which of each of these things do I want to take with me as I build my life and my business and my world?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's tremendous. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for joining me today. Where should people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me. My website is domestiquefinancial.com. Realize I didn't pick the easiest business name for people to spell, but hopefully you can put a link below. And if anybody catches on the professional cycling reference, they get kudos points for that. And then, yeah, or you can find me on LinkedIn under Kari White. And yeah, either way, I'd love to connect.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we will absolutely have your links in the show notes. So, everyone, thank you for listening. You can find Success is Weird and Messy wherever you get your podcasts. And it helps us so much if you follow, rate, and review. And if you like the show, tell a friend. We'll see you next week.